The time has come for me to move on. I have a big announcement. Take 0. All right, so for those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you may have saw a little snippet of this. This is a longer form discussion about what I announced on LinkedIn today, Wednesday, June 12th. And that announcement is I am selling Intellic integration. I explained some of my reasonings in the LinkedIn video, but LinkedIn limits videos to 15 minutes, and I wanted to make sure I had a much larger conversation for the community, going into the details, more of the details of what I'm actually doing, the thought process that went into it. So I am selling Intellic integration for 3 primary reasons. Intellic Integration is my systems integrator firm that I started in 2015, and it started in the front lawn of my house, 100-degree day, having a conversation with my wife at the time. And the conversation started with, I was running another integrator. I was a operations manager. I was the manager of Texas operations for another world famous systems integrator. It's the integrator I worked for when I won my Firebrand Award. And I said to my wife at the time, I don't like the way the industry operates, and I think there's a better way to do this, and I think I'm the one who can do it. And over the course of the next 7 months or so, I formulated the model. I basically codified what I had been testing and formulated a plan to create Intellic and get it off the ground. And within 6 weeks, I was cash flow positive, and I had 4 employees. Within 12 weeks, everybody had been converted to W-2. Within 9 months, we had $1 million in sales and 7 clients, and it's just been straight up since then. In 2017, 2 years in, I approached the team that I had built, and I said, I want to make this employee-owned. I didn't create Intellic for me. My mission is to save and create middle-class jobs. I wanted to build the type of place I wanted to work, but this wasn't, my legacy isn't going to be I'm running a company. That's not I want to change the world. I want to go to the end of my life. I want to turn back. I want to look at my life, and I want to say I left it better than I found it, and I had a positive impact. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes, but my legacy is a positive one. And the team I had at the time wasn't necessarily interested in employee ownership. They kind of wanted me to own it and run everything. And so, I don't know, maybe within 6 months, I had a core group of 4 of us. There was a guy I had brought in. I had hired. I've told the story about how I decided to hire him when I asked him the question, tell me a time you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. And he told me the story about his, he was in Utah, and his I think it was his dad was sick in Washington, state of Washington. His mom I think she was a traveling nurse, and she needed to leave, and he had to get to Washington. He was driving a piece of shit car. He gets halfway. It overheats on the side of the road. He sees that it actually had a cracked cylinder. It's on a Friday afternoon, and he fucking calls machine shops within, 5 miles of him, finds one that's willing to let him come take the head off, drive to this shop, weld it together, use a TIG welder, and then hone it out, and then put the car back together and limp it back to Washington so he could take care of his dad. And I asked him, had you ever done that before? And he said, no, but I knew I could figure it out. He had degrees in mechanical engineering and finance, and he had no experience in our industry, but I hired him, when we were doing our group interview, I hired him on that decision. And then I said, fuck it. I'm going to throw this guy to the wolves. So I hired him in April, and we took an approach with him that was different than the approach we took with other engineers at that point. I wanted to give him as little support as humanly possible out of the gate. So he knew our values, he knew what we stood for, but we gave him little support. We didn't look over him. We only gave support he asked for. And it was a strategic decision. And we actually gave him a project to do. We don't normally do that. Normally people come in and no one, a new engineer, it doesn't matter what their skill set is, they're not leading a project and tasked with making sure a client is successful for a year. I mean, and within 3 months, I had handed off. I was a client I was leading, and I had handed it off to him, and I gave him the summer to see if he could take ownership. That was in 2018, and he still oversees that client to this day. He actually runs Intellic integration day to day, and he has since 2021, the last 3 years. He does that in conjunction with 2 other people. One is the chief experience officer, and then the other one is the guy who's in charge of all of engineering. That guy who came here from all of engineering, he joined Intellic by sending me a message on LinkedIn and telling me a story about he had been following us. I think this is 2019. He had been following us on YouTube. He sends me a message and he says, Intellic is my dream. It's where I want to be. Here's my experience. Here's all the things I've done. Here are the integrators I've worked with. This is what my philosophy is. This is what I believe. And what you guys talk about is what I believe is the future of this business. And a friend of mine, his dream job was to go work for Amazon. And he didn't get an interview when he submitted his resume. So he just started reaching out to everybody at Amazon that he could find on LinkedIn. And he said, hey, Amazon's my dream job. I want to be there. Your HR department made a mistake by not interviewing me. Could you please share my resume with somebody if you think I'm a fit? And eventually that guy got into Amazon. And when this guy, the guy who came to join us, was talking to his friend and he told him that story, he said, where's your dream job? And he said, Intellic integration. And so he sent that message to me on LinkedIn. And we had him hired within, 4 weeks. And today he's our director of engineering and oversees every single one of our engineers. And he's an exceptional architect, and he's one of the guys who has Keyman insurance. And he's going to be one of the new owners. And then the chief experience officer was brought in by our chief operating officer and has been with us, I think, 4 years now. His first 6 months, he didn't come from this industry. He came from insurance. He dedicated the first 6 months learning the language. And he had already believed in what our values were. And he took those values and he applied them to his everyday operation. And today, though, that core group of 3 guys really runs our company. They really run Intellic integration. I'm the chairman. They come to me with major problems. Last year, they came to me with 2. So in 2023, they came to me with 2. And so the guy who joined me in 2018, who is our chief operating officer to this day and will become one of the new owners of the company, he knew that I always wanted to make it an employee-owned company. And so over the last few months, we've been having, I talked about this at the end of last summer with the group, and then we started accelerating these conversations recently. I finalized the overall plan with our lawyers yesterday, and we will start executing the sale over the summer. And when summer rolls around, the end of the summer rolls around, and I come back from sabbatical, the goal is I will no longer have any ownership stake in Intellic integration whatsoever. So for those of you who are interested, I'm going to tell you what that process looks like, why I came to the conclusion, what are the reasons I'm doing it, but also kind of some of the mechanics that we've kind of laid out. Hey, here's how you sell a company, and then what does it mean? What does that mean for Intellic? What does it mean for 4.0 solutions? So let me start with the 3 primary reasons I'm doing it. Number one, I've always wanted Intellic to be employee-owned. I've always wanted it to be more like a law firm that was based on transparency, authenticity, expertise, humility, and servant leadership. Intellic integration is run. All of my companies are run. There is nothing we discuss in the boardroom. There is nothing that we discuss, the leadership team discusses, that the entire team is not aware of. There are never any private conversations. I literally say all the time, nothing is private here. Okay, our standard is no privacy. So you don't assume anything you say, assume everyone's hearing it, and be prepared to tell everyone. So we don't, say we have a problem employee, maybe someone slips through and they don't believe in our values. We've had this happen. We had an engineer we hired a couple of years ago. I didn't hire him. I actually wasn't part of the hiring process. I think had I been, I might have seen it, maybe not. But he slipped through and he immediately was butting heads with his boss. And the way that we handled that was we had a team-wide meeting, every single employee in the conference room. And I was going over my pyramid of values, the values and the mission of the company. And then I literally just turned to the engineer who was there and said, you and this director don't see eye to eye. And while you have a lot of promise on paper, you've never done anything. Like, I know you say that you've done this and you've built this and built this and built this, but if our clients aren't telling us that you have fundamentally changed their business, and our director who oversees you is a guy who's been doing it for 5 years and has never failed, and I have to choose between the two of you, I have to choose him, because our mission is to help save and create middle-class jobs by helping manufacturers do more with less through digital transformation. And he has a track record of doing that, and you do not. And that conversation was in front of our entire team. There was no private conversation behind the scenes where, how do we get rid of this guy and not pay him unemployment? You know what happened once we ultimately let him go, which we did. We gave him a bunch of chances and we let him go. He reached out and he asked, he said, hey, I'm in a tough spot financially. He had gotten a small severance. He hadn't been here very long. In fact, he didn't even make it to his 90 days. And he said, hey, I'm in a tough spot financially. Could you pay me more in the severance? And when they brought it to me, I said, can we afford it? And they said, yes. And I said, do it. We have a moral obligation to do it. That doesn't happen at other companies. I mean, there are other companies like that, and we try to find them, the values-based organizations. Intellic is a values-based organization, and we don't operate the way most companies operate. The hardest part for most people when they come to Intellic integration is dealing with transparency. That's how you know how rare transparency is. If you ask somebody who's been here for 6 months, they will tell you the hardest part for them was getting used to what transparency actually is. Because most people are used to being exploited, they're used to being lied to, they're used to being taken advantage of. And we don't do that. So over the last couple of years, I've gotten a bunch of offers to sell Intellic. I've never really entertained any of them except for one last year. I'm not allowed to get into the exact numbers, but I can give you the figures. So last year I got 2 offers from the same firm. It was an IT firm that wanted to buy Intellic integration. They were both 8-figure offers. So that's 10 million or higher. The first offer was for N, and it was if I stayed 1 year, they were going to pay N. If I agreed to stay 5 years, they were going to pay 3N. So that was the offer I got, a multiple of an 8-figure offer. I ultimately turned down the offer because A, I don't need the money, and B, I want Intellic to be employee owned. If I'm going to sell Intellic integration, I'm selling it to the team. Full stop. So when me and the team started talking about this, the core 3 guys, and there's ultimately going to be an employee stock option plan, and there'll be a method for everyone to earn ownership in the company. That's part of the deal. But there's 3 people who should be in that ownership group. And when I originally approached them about the idea, and the director of operations or the CEO or the chief operating officer, he used to be DOO. He already knew I was, that I worked closely with him. We talked about it a bunch of times. The director of engineering who wrote the LinkedIn, on LinkedIn, he was aware. I talked to him at the end of last summer, but I think the chief experience officer, he had never been part of the conversations yet. I just basically said, hey, listen, I want Intellic to be employee owned, I need to sell my ownership. And I'm going to tell you why here in two more reasons. And we worked out a rough deal. And that rough deal is a 7-figure deal. It is actually it is 0.4 N. So if N was the original offer and 3N was the high offer, so I had 2 offers of N and 3N, I am selling it to the employees for 40% of the lowest offer I got. And the reason why is because the employees don't have the resources that a huge IT firm has to come in and buy my brand, which ultimately, that at the end of the day, that's what they wanted. They wanted to come in and buy Intellic Integration, the brand. They wanted to buy our CRM. They didn't believe in our values. They didn't believe in what I stand for. They didn't care. They would have kept them all, and they probably would have kept the language, but behind closed doors, they wouldn't have operated the way we operated. The team that runs my company right now, the team that runs Intellic Integration, they operate based on the corporate values. They operate based on the company's values. They believe them. They're bought in 1,000%. They fucking care about the team. They care about the clients. They weigh what's best for the client against what's best for us. And they go, can we afford to do what's not best for us? Yes, we can. And it's best for the client. We're going to do it. They do that. They make those decisions. And so that's why they're the ones who should own the company. Those who have made offers to me are going to be very unhappy that I sold the company to the employees for a fraction of what they offered me. But I'm doing that because I want the team to own it. All right. Reason number 2 is 4.0 Solutions is expanding exponentially, and it needs my undivided attention. The ProveIt conference, which we launched early access on Monday, and it goes to wide release next Monday on June 17th, for next winter's conference, the ProveIt conference, it is a lot of work. I've put up $350,000 to just make it happen. And then we have a huge team of people putting this conference on. And we're going to do it every year. And next year, in 2026, next year in 2025, our plan will be to move to a bigger venue, a much bigger venue, and bring the top end to 1,000 attendees with 1,250 as our surge capacity. And that, whereas this year for the 2025 conference, we're looking at 500 and 750. And the response has been overwhelming. I mean, we have more sponsor interest, even if 60% of the sponsors who want to participate in ProveIt, if 60% of the vendors who want to participate and sponsor ultimately end up doing it, we're going to still have to combine people together in the sessions in order for us to, and we already have that happening. We already have vendors saying, hey, we want to work together. Vendor A wants to work with vendor B to do their session. So now we've got 2 sponsors splitting one sponsorship, and they're going to do one session. They'll have one booth, right? So we're going to be able to fit everyone in, but it's a huge undertaking, and we want to, the number of people we've added to Mastermind in the last year, we literally almost doubled the number of students, and it's only the number of times I spoke in the last year. It's my 4.0 needs my undivided attention. And number 3, and I think what makes it, why it's happening this year, like why is it we're not waiting until next year? I think the straw that broke the camel's back was, and this has been a problem for some time, I cannot always, in order for me to provide maximum value at 4.0 Solutions for the audience, I have to be able to speak freely. I have to be able to tell you the truth. I have to be able to say, here's the story. Here's I have to be able to tell you this. Most people in our industry don't know that the reason we didn't see like web pages being served, like why is it that most PLCs didn't have a web server running in the PLC until recently, in the last 5, 6, 7 years? Why is it we saw an explosion of that in the last 5, 6, or 7 years? But from the year 2000 to 2000 18, 19, or whatever, we didn't see that. Why is it we didn't see that? Well, I can tell you this story because I don't have an agreement that binds me from telling you. But it's an example of the type of story I can't tell you because I have agreements, okay? Or Intellic has agreements, not me. Schneider Electric submitted a patent for web servers on PLCs in the late 90s, early 2000s. And any company that had a web server running on their PLCs had to pay a license of, I think it was $700 per device to Schneider or be sued. And Schneider sued. I mean, their goal was to get paid through, the bullshit that wasn't even a fucking novel idea. Okay. Schneider, putting a web page on a PLC is not novel. It didn't require millions of dollars of research and development. What it was unethical. And let me say it again. It was unethical that Schneider Electric did that. Okay? There was another company. There was only one vendor who chose to really fight Schneider. Okay? You had most vendors either paid the licensing fee, Rockwell Automation did, either paid the licensing fee, or they said, we're not putting web servers on our PLCs, making it harder for the end user to do configuration because now you had to have custom software. You had to have custom software. They would write their own software for you to do the configuration of the modules. And if you were ever pulling your fucking hair out in the early 2000s going, why is it so fucking hard? It's because Schneider submitted a patent for that, which they didn't develop the technology. Newsflash, developing a web page on a microcontroller it didn't cost you $10 million in R&D. What it is you did it over a weekend, you saw no one had patented it, and you tried to get it through. Just like Schneider is trying to do right now by patenting, updating a PLC program using SparkPlug-B. It's the same bullshit, okay? I have to be able to tell you those stories. I can tell you that story right now because Schneider can't sue me because there's no agreement that I'm bound by, okay? I can tell you how the industry operates because I'm not bound. But there are things that I've seen as the owner of Intellic Integration from vendors and from a couple of end users, although the end user isn't the real problem, some of them are, that I can't say because I'm bound by agreements at Intellic Integration, because I'm an owner of Intellic Integration. And there was one in particular that recently happened that is fucked up. There's a couple of them actually. That's fucked up and unethical. They've happened over the last year or so. And it's a story that must be told. And while I can't tell that story, I need to stop the antecedent that keeps me from telling the audience the truth. Otherwise, there's no point in me coming on here. Okay? You'll notice we haven't posted a lot of videos in the last few weeks. Okay? New videos. Why? Because when I come on camera, I speak from the heart. There's no bullshit here. I tell you what's in my heart, in my brain, and I trust the authenticity will come through. I trust that I have the best intentions, and so I just communicate heart and brain to my lips out. I have tried to shoot videos over the last few weeks, and each time I've tried to shoot it, every time I've tried to shoot a video, I've come back to some unethical story, some story I should tell that I can't tell. And so when you take into conjunction, I want Intellic Integration to be owned by the employees. Okay. I need to focus on 4.0 solutions for ProveIt and IIoT and Industry. And I need to free my hands so that I can speak the truth, whether that truth is just my opinion or whether it's a combination of my opinion, I'm evaluating facts and formulating opinion, or whether I'm just telling you the facts. I'm telling you right now, really, really unethical companies are hiding behind these agreements, and the agreements are not going to go anywhere. So I have to free myself from them. Okay. All right. How does this deal work? Okay, so if you know I'm selling the company for 0.4N of my lowest offer, I'm giving a huge deal to the employees so that it goes to the employees. How are we doing it? So what we're doing is we are currently formulating, actually the plan is all put in place. The new ownership group and I will meet next week to kind of go over what the plan is. We'll tweak it. We will talk about, so the ultimate goal is for there to be an employee stock option plan for all employees. And how do we make that happen? Like there are other members of the team that could potentially be owners on day one, and they're working through those details. Or if they're not employee owners, how will that, when will they be? That's going to be worked out by the new ownership group, not me. And the reason why was my advisors told me, don't build the ship they're going to sail. So we will not predefine the employee stock option plan. That'll be left to the new ownership group. They will not cut me a check for the company. Okay, I will not have a huge influx of cash. What we are going to do is, I don't need the money, and so we are going to work that they're going to pay it over time. Okay, probably over the course of a decade, maybe even 15 years. We don't know yet, but that final detail isn't in. They're going to pay it over time. Okay, that is something I'm doing to make this happen. Okay, to make it. My vision, my dream was always for this to be employee owned. And honestly, I'll probably cry when I sign the fucking contracts, sign the agreements, because I will have, from that time I was sitting in my front yard talking about building something better, the place where I would want to work, the place that had super low turnover, the place where the destination engineers wanted to go. When I sign it and I'm literally handing it over to the employees, giving the keys over to the team, I'll probably cry. I mean, yeah, I'll definitely, because it fulfills a vision from the very beginning based on my core values. It means I built a team that believed the same things that I believed, and it worked, and it had a positive impact on our industry. What does it mean for me at Intellic Integration? Well, while I won't be an owner at Intellic Integration anymore, and we actually won't share office space, or the company 4.0 Solutions and Intellic Integration will be completely separate, the strategic partnership we have in place will remain. I'll still consult for Intellic Integration on a case-by-case basis, just like I consult for Galeris Industrial Solutions, or I consult for Dotom in Colombia, or I consult for Enter in other integrators, Skellig or whatever. Intellic Integration it'll be the same relationship, and vice versa. 4.0 Solutions will still use the architects at Intellic Integration on a case-by-case basis as we're doing our DTMAs, Digital Transformation Maturity Assessments. So it will be now a strategic partnership rather than a vertically integrated division working together. And then last but not least, what's the impact on the community? Well, the community is going to get a lot more of my time. The students at IIoT and Industry will get a lot more of my time. The vendors and participants, the attendees, especially the end user attendees who will come to ProveIt to see vendors prove function and application in Industry 4 will get a lot more of my time. I'll have a lot more time to write. One of the things that we have is the UNS handbook is coming out on LinkedIn. I finally got approval from the publisher to create a version for LinkedIn. It'll be released as LinkedIn articles. The introduction will be published, I think, next week. It was supposed to be this week, but because of the ProveIt launch, we held off on. So basically, the chapters will be released on LinkedIn for free. The definitive UNS handbook, and hopefully this will extinguish some of the, the misperceptions out there about what UNS is. But Intellic and 4.0 Solutions will still be very, very close strategic partners. But I will not have anything to do with the day-to-day operations, and I will no longer own the company or have an ownership stake in the company whatsoever. And the new ownership group will make all the decisions day-to-day, strategic, and long-term. All right. That's my announcement. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Any blind spots? Any comments, questions, or concerns? Let me know down below. And like, subscribe, give me those comments, and we'll see you in the next one.